Okay, Lori, so I am going to
Share with us in the chat your first name and where you're joining from. We have some people still connecting. Again, please go ahead and share your first name and where you're joining from. Looks like we have people from all over the state. That's great. All right. A couple more people just connecting right now. Just give it another minute. So glad you're all able to join us. It's a beautiful afternoon and you're sitting inside on a webinar, but we're glad that you're here with us today. All right, a couple more people joining. Again, we'll give it just another minute here to make sure people can get in before we get started. All right. Okay, I think we'll just go ahead and get started today. And welcome everyone to our Recovery Health Changemakers webinar. I'm Lori Hendrickson, and I'm just kind of getting us started this afternoon. Just want to remind you that this is one in a series of recovery health webinars, and we'll share the remaining webinars with you at the end of today's session. We will kind of get into things here a little bit and help us to understand a little bit of why you are joining today. We have a poll here and we will launch the poll. We just basically want to know why you're joining us today. Is it for personal use or is it professional use, or maybe it's a little bit of both? Please share with us and we will go ahead and share that with the group. We'll let it go just a little bit longer. Let a few more people participate. All right, let's see. We're going to end that poll and share the results with you. Okay, so what we're seeing is most people are using this for both professional and personal use. 61%, some just for professional use. And surprisingly, no one just for personal use today. So we hope that you will find that this is informative for you today, and that you will find it useful, whether personally or professionally. So just moving along then, we want to acknowledge our web producer, Diane Seefeld, and as we told her earlier, we're just happy to have someone with us to help us with all the technical issues that sometimes come along with our webinars. So thanks, Diane, for joining us today. I'm just going to briefly introduce, and I will let each presenter tell a little bit more about their involvement with the Changemakers and in general recovery health. Mary Jo Katras is going to get us started here today, and we also have 2 Changemakers that will be available to help out with their stories today. Annette and Jenna are going to share their stories as well. I'm going to right now just let Mary Jo take over and give us an introduction into the program and what has happened.
Sure. Thank you, Lori. I'm excited to see everyone here today. I see some familiar names and faces, so it's good to see everyone. Hopefully soon we'll be able to see each other in person and continue building our partnerships and our relationships, because we know that's what it's all about. And so you're going to hear a lot of that as we kind of go through our conversation today and learn more about our Changemakers and that part of our work that we've been doing for the last few years. So my name is Mary Jo Katras, and I am program leader in our Center for Family Development with University of Minnesota Extension. And for the past, since 2018, we have been doing a work around the opioid crisis in the northeast part of Minnesota. And so we've been working in Pine, Aiken, Itasca, St. Louis County, along with 2 of our tribal communities, Boys Fort and Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. And so we've been our work really focuses on supporting recovery. And our project has many, many partners, and it has only grown over the last 3 years. And this work has just, it is so needed in our communities. As a lot of you know, and have maybe been following the opioid crisis over the last number of years, and just seeing how communities really need support. And so our work really focuses on building that support and really building resilient recovery communities. And so the grant has many different kind of moving parts to it, but all of the parts really take a community-driven approach. And that is how we do all of our work within Extension and with our partners, is that we have these resources sometimes through grants to help to support communities through education and resources and building those. But we often don't know what is needed in communities. And we also know that each community is unique. And so we really depend on our community members, our community partners, to tell us, how do we do this work? What is going to be most impactful? We have, we can use the research that's being done at the university, and we can use other kind of knowledge, that Indigenous science that we know from within our communities. But that lived experience is really important to our work, and can have, can really help us have the largest impact in communities, not only just, one time, but to create capacity that has sustainable change. So one of the projects that is part of our opioid work over the last few years is our Changemakers. And this speaks to a lot of what I just said around helping us to understand, and our community partners and the folks are in this work together, understand what is needed. And so when we first started this work, that's where we needed to ask that question. We needed to ask the communities that were part of this work that question. And so we were able to do some community forums and some stakeholder interviews. And then we launched 2 retreats to really launch our Changemaker activities, our Changemaker program, I guess we could call it. But really this gave the opportunity to folks in the community to say, hey, do you have an idea about what's going to work around recovery? Can you help us? And so we offered 2 retreats. One was 2 days and one was 3 days. One in Palisade and Aiken County, and the other in in St. Louis County at Giants Ridge. In, Laura, you're going to have to help me out with the name of the city.
Wabac.
Wabac. I knew it, but I didn't want to mess it up. Wabac. I just spelled it today. Anyways, and so we hosted 2 retreats where folks applied to be part of those retreats. And then through our colleagues in our Center for Community Vitality, we led them through our Changemakers, through a process of learning and growing around leadership, and really trying to bring those ideas that they brought to the retreats to life. What were those ideas that could help to support recovery, and really encouraging the ideas to be innovative? And we didn't really have to encourage that. They were all very innovative and very kind of outside the box, and ones that we would have never, from the experiences that we have on our team, would have never thought of. At least I know that comes from my own perspective. So we spent time together learning and growing through this leadership model. And at the end, Roy, can you next slide, please? Thank you. At the end of the opportunity, or end of the retreats in both weekends that we did these, our Changemakers were offered the opportunity to apply for funding. And so we supported them along this way and throughout the process. So each Changemaker was assigned a coach, or was partnered with a coach that helped them kind of package their idea in a proposal kind of format, and then presented it to our team. And we were able to help bring those ideas to life through some mini grants. And so the coaches continued to support Changemakers throughout the process. And then also through our Center for Community Vitality and our colleagues, Changemakers were brought together once a month to, talk about different topics and talk about what was going on as a group with coaches and Changemakers. And so that's what happened through that process. And we had many, many great projects that happened. And of course, probably the same story that's told a lot recently is COVID messed things up a little bit for us. And so a lot of the projects weren't able to really be implemented in the ways that we wanted them to, but we're adaptive and we're flexible in our work. And so today we're going to learn about 2 of our Changemakers, Annette and Jenna, and the work that they've done and continue to do throughout this pandemic, and really have supported our communities in building that support, or what we refer to as recovery capital. And so Annette, pictures of Annette and Jenna is one of her adorable little daughters. And so I am going to turn it over to, I see that also that in the chat, Diane put the link to our Changemakers on our website. So please go there, and we have bios and little stories around each of our Changemakers, so you can learn more about other Changemakers that were involved in this activity, in this program. So I'm going to turn it over to Annette, and she's going to share a little bit about her work.
Hi, everybody. My name's Annette. I went to the Changemakers retreat that was in Aiken. When I went there, I guess I didn't expect at all it to be what it was. I had a huge amount of ideas, and they were really all over the place, and they were able to help me break it down to a manageable amount and a realistic start. And so as long as that solid foundation, we're able to help fill those gaps along the way. And so if you want to go to the next slide, Recovery Support Team is a pilot program. It's a grant program through the Department of Justice and the DHS. This program meets the individuals where they're at without judgment. It's here to support and assist and guide people to their goals, but not to force them. This program is, law enforcement refers individuals that are considered heavy hitters in law enforcement that have addiction issues. And whereas jail is not going to help them, they want to link them to different services and give them opportunities to get better because it is a disease. And so they brought it to us to try to start this program and fill some gaps, find out what the gaps are to be able to help individuals not end up back in jail or have no contact with law enforcement. That's the end goal, is to not have any more contact with law enforcement. If you want to go to the next slide. So that's really the program's designed to stop that recidivism that are struggling. And we have had, on our team is an LADC. We have a mental health professional. And then we also have 2 certified peer recovery specialists. So we're able to wrap these individuals once law enforcement refers. Only law enforcement and probation can refer. Once they refer, then we can wrap them in services, get them into treatment if they need that, get them into detox first if they need that, and then be able to kind of support them as long as they need. There was a cap on the time. It was supposed to be 6 months, but we were able to change that and make it longer, because most people, if that was the case when they met us and then they went to treatment, they wouldn't have much time after that to have the support that they need. And really, when somebody gets out of treatment, that's a huge place that they need those supportive services, because usually they're getting out of treatment and nothing. And so this is that way to wrap them in services. And so if you want to go to the next slide. So it's meant to help find a better solution in our community for individuals with substance use disorders that are having like 3 to 4 encounters per month with law enforcement. We've provided many resources to our clients. We've assisted and addressed issues like homelessness, mental health concerns, physical health concerns, financial situations, transportation, domestic assault. We've helped people get employment. We've helped them work through CPS cases to get their children back. We've had some success stories, and one of our referrals, if you want to go to the slide that has a success, yeah. So as long as an addict still is breathing, there's hope. That is my slogan, and it's one of my most favorite phrases. I've used it a lot because a lot of people get calloused when it comes to addiction, and they feel like it's useless. And so that's what I use a lot to tell people that there's always hope. Just don't give up on people. One of our initial referrals was not expected to work well with us. This was stated by the police department who referred him. We were able to encourage him to go to inpatient treatment. He had previously avoided treatment. He was able to remain sober for almost a year. He did have another run-in with law enforcement, but then he went to treatment again on his own. And he is now living outside of our county, so we can't really follow him, but the last I knew that he was doing really well. And it was one that was stated that they weren't going to make it. They were too gone. So I'm really impressed with that person. We had another individual, same reaction, but she has been clean and sober since entering our program. And she has her own place. She has a job. She got her children back from CPS. So we've had a lot of really good success stories. We've also had people that just don't want to accept our program, and maybe someday they will. The door is open for those people. And so I started talking throughout the community because we talked a lot about collaboration. And one of my friends in recovery, Cynthia Townley, she and I have wanted to help bridge the gaps in recovery and create a place that's safe, that's always going to be there for addicts that are trying to find some stability, whether they're still in active use or if they're in recovery. So if you want to go to the next slide. Oops, I guess I skipped a couple. So if you want to go to the mission restart. So Cynthia and I met and we started discussing things, and Cynthia really got a calling and she made Mission Restart, and I introduced her to the University of Minnesota Extension Service, and Mission Restart is now up and running. And that's just from kind of planting seeds and saying, this is something we need, and somebody else taking that seed and going with it. And I really think that's what Changemakers is about, is planting seeds, giving those connections, and helping people learn that, oh, this person in my community wants to do this. Maybe we can get together and create something better. And I really think that's what Changemakers has done in our communities. They've opened up a lot of doors, and including Mission Restart, and they've helped us along the way to kind of guide us. They didn't do it for us, but they guided us in the right directions. And so Cynthia Townley is the president and founder of Mission Restart. And she is also a woman in long-term recovery, just like me. We actually went to the same treatment facility, and she is a certified peer recovery specialist as well. And she was also a chemical dependency tech at one of our local treatment centers. Anyway, this is Mission Restart. It's a 24-hour hotline for individuals that are struggling with chemical dependency. They can call that line and be linked to a peer that's been there, and with no judgment. Like they can still be in active use, and we're not going to judge them. We're going to try to get them help. And even if they call in and we plant that seed and they're not ready that day, we can go forward and they'll call back in, you know. And then we're trying to start now what's going to turn into a recovery outreach center, where there's a place for people to go anytime to have that collaboration with other people that are in recovery, a safe place to go, a place where meetings will be held on a continuous basis. It's a nonprofit now legally, so that was exciting to get that status. It took us a little bit, but we did it, and it's in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and the websites, I think they put the list of the website at the end there, but so we're still moving forward with what started at Changemakers. So I'm really, really blessed to have been able to go to that retreat and learn as much as I did. And who knows where it's going to stop, because I feel like it's just a spider web that keeps going. So thank you, guys. I kind of skip my slides.
That's just fine. And thanks so much, Annette, for sharing that. It's exciting to see from the first time that you and I met, you know, as me being a coach and you having this idea, and where it has gone at this point is just really exciting to watch all of this time. So thanks again. We so appreciate all the work and look forward to seeing what will happen with you and with Mission Restart going forward.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you.
Next up, we have Jenna, and she was part of the Giants Ridge cohort of Changemakers, and Jenna's going to share a little bit about her journey as well.
Hi, thank you for having me, Lori and Mary Jo. I feel very grateful to be here today. So I'll share a little bit about myself, and then a little bit about trauma-informed yoga and how Changemakers really has grown my work through trauma-informed yoga too. So my name is Jenna, and I am a grateful alcoholic. I kind of a little bit about my recovery story is the first time I went to treatment was I went to Hazelton down in Center City, and I stayed there for 3 months. And when I got out, you know, everyone around me thought, oh, she's fixed, you know, she's fixed. And inside I knew that I wasn't fixed. And I stayed sober on and off, and didn't work a program, didn't really want to do anything that I was told in treatment. But, you know, I stayed, like I said, I stayed sober for a while. And then I got married and had our first child. And my background before yoga is I was an elementary teacher. And so kind of I share that too, just because I think that we have this stigma that recovery and addiction and stuff really is, you know, for people that maybe aren't professionals. I don't say that like in a generic term, but I feel like it affects anyone and everyone. And so I was an elementary teacher at the time. So the second time I went to treatment, I went back to Hazelton, and I only stayed for 30 days, and I thought, I'm fixed. I drank the Kool-Aid. I planted the seeds that I was told I wanted it. You know, I wanted it because I wanted it. But when I got out, I started to go to 12-step meetings. I chose AA. I know there's other things, but I didn't really feel the connection I needed, and I didn't know how, I guess, to find the support that I needed, because I felt that stigma that, you know, I couldn't go where I needed to go. I couldn't share who I was. I couldn't really find the support I needed. So I stayed on and off sober. I'd be sober for a couple months, and then I would have a weekend of where I'd pick up a bottle of vodka, and then so forth. And so that went on for about a year. And my rock bottom was I ended up in jail. And I'll get a little teary-eyed, I'm sure, because, you know, that was the bottom of my barrel. Hopefully, you know, it's a day in and day out thing. And so I didn't go back to treatment. And I was saying this to Mary Jo, our last meeting that we had. I said, you know, treatment is kind of like a Band-Aid, and it's a good Band-Aid. It can stop the bleeding of whatever wounds there are, but it doesn't fix those wounds. And so working a 12-step program and doing other things that are out there in recovery are what really heal the wounds. And so I ended up, you know, going to jail. When I got out, I thought, I don't need to change just me stopping drinking. I needed to change everything about myself. And so that's when the work for me started. I knew I needed to stop teaching, and I just had this calling to get my yoga teaching license. And so I got my yoga teaching license the May. So I ended up, you know, my last hurrah was in April, and I got my yoga teaching license at the end of May. And so that would have been in 2018. And so then that's when the whole trauma thing started. It was so cool. So I got my yoga teaching license through Yoga Fit. It's a worldwide yoga company. And I just had this calling to go on this trauma-informed yoga path. And so for me, my healing, my work starts each day when I choose to do my meditation and my yoga to see where I'm at. And so that's what trauma-informed yoga does to us. It allows us to connect our mind back to our body and to figure out, you know, what's going on in our thinker. A lot of us addicts and alcoholics have a lot, our brains are broken essentially. And so we have these repetitive thoughts. And for me, the repetitive thoughts were a lot of fear and a lot of, I'm not good enough for anything. And so, you know, when I change those thoughts day in and day out, that's when my healing and my work, for me to be of service to those around me each and every day is. So I continued on the yoga informed, trauma informed yoga path, and I got my mind body recovery coach license. And the cool thing is it's just so crazy how the universe works. So I was teaching yoga at a dance studio in Aurora, and I'm happened to meet this gal through the county, and she said, I really think you would be good at this Changemaker retreat. And I was like, sure, I'll give it a whirl. So I signed up for the Changemaker retreat, and it was just like exactly what I needed at that point in time. So I had in the works of opening a yoga studio in Aurora. And so I was opening the process of the studio during the Changemaker retreat. And so that would have been in November, I think, 2019. And at the Changemaker retreat, they really pushed me to keep thinking of how can I work in recovery? I know that yoga is so important, and I know that I want to be on this trauma-informed path, but how can I keep in recovery? So the ball just started rolling for me. And after the retreat, a gal from the Mesabi Daily News did an article on me, and then a gal from the Virginia Drug and Alcohol Court read the article, and she was like, we really want trauma-informed yoga in our drug and alcohol court. So I started to do yoga with the participants in the drug and alcohol court. And then the pandemic hit. So that was a challenge, because then we had to start to do videos. So I would make a video, and then the participants and they would do them, or, it was hard, because people new into recovery or trying to get their feet on the ground. A video, yes, it can be helpful, but more the one-on-one, I think, the touch, it was hard to engage, I guess, at that point. But through that, then Mary Jo had introduced me to a gal that works with a treatment center over in Brainerd. And so I started to do Zoom trauma-informed yoga with a treatment center over in Brainerd, and that was awesome. And so I still do that. And then I started to do it with their day treatment. It seems like it's more powerful with the day treatment people right now, I think, because they meet with me more consistent. I'm not sure why, but they seem to be really enjoying it. So what is trauma-informed yoga? Lori, I think if you want to maybe go to the next slide. Okay, so the benefits of yoga in recovery. Yes, it can reduce our cravings, it can reduce our stress, it can reduce our anxiety, our chronic pain, our insomnia, all these things. And Lori, if you can go to the next slide, let's see. Okay, so I'll just talk about, can we go back to that of what it can do? Thank you. So for me, I will share kind of, what it does for me first, and then I'll share kind of what the theory behind it is. For me, when I wake up in the morning, I can either wake up feeling awesome, ready for the day, or I can wake up feeling really fearful and already triggered, and who knows why, I'm not sure why, but that's just the way it is. So what my trauma-informed yoga does for me is it allows me to realize what's already going on with me before I have to dig into the conflicts of the world, right? So we have this big nerve that goes from our forehead all the way down our spine, and it's called our vagus nerve, and it controls our fight or flight. We know people with addiction stuff have a vagus nerve that is firing a lot, and so it can have all kinds of effects on us when it is firing. And what trauma-informed yoga does is it can help calm that vagus nerve just by gentle movement. So it's not yoga that is standing on our head or holding a pose for a long time. It's yoga that's gentle movement and allowing our mind to connect back to our body, so we can be less reactive. We can be more aware of how we're going to react, and we can kind of process what's going on in our world a lot more effectively. trauma-informed yoga is not just for people in recovery. It is for anyone and everyone. I didn't realize when I was an elementary teacher, I did yoga with my classes. I just did it, and it works. And now with my own girls, we do yoga every morning, and it works. So let's see, where else do I want to go? Can we go to the next slide, Lori? So how Changemakers come in, I guess I kind of already covered that, of how it really, when the pandemic hit, obviously my yoga studio in Aurora that I opened closed. So not only did Changemakers keep my practice going, it also, I mean, it has so helped my own recovery, and it pushes me every single day to keep my own 2 feet grounded, me willing to learn, me willing to grow, me willing to do the next right thing. And I feel like if I wouldn't have gone to that Changemakers retreat, I don't know if I would have made it through the pandemic. With yoga so much of a forefront of my life, and to keep really pushing it for recovery, because I had that support that I needed. And I had the people still emailing me to say, oh, hey, like there's this or there's this. And I needed that. And so I thank the Changemakers a lot for that. It has been just so awesome in my life. Can we go to the next slide, Lori? Here is my email, and I have a YouTube channel. It's some of the videos are really old, and I was pregnant for some of them. So if I've got a big old belly, and some of them is because I was pregnant. Some of them are short, some of them are long. Some of them are a whole yoga, what I would have done in yoga class or what I would do in yoga class. And some of them are just kind of to connect that mind back to our body. And so I was wondering and wanting to do a little just mind body exercise today with anyone who would care to join. And so it'll just be about 5 minutes long. And if that doesn't feel right, then by all means, don't feel obligated. But 90% of whether we be an addict or an alcoholic or just a person, 90% of our thoughts are repetitive. We think the same thoughts every day. Yes, new things, information comes in, but what we do with that information is we generally think the same kind of critical thoughts, or these thoughts that most of the time don't serve us a purpose. And so day in and day out, trauma-informed yoga can heal because it allows us to rethink our thoughts and to retrain our brain. And that's why it's so powerful in recovery, is because in treatment, it's a seed planted. When people start recovery, it's a seed planted. And I listen to a daily recovery podcast every day. And I think it was like 2 weeks ago, they were saying how, think of when we enter recovery, like our ground is here and the roots start to grow. They connect into the ground. Are the things that we do on a daily basis make those roots grow stronger, but they also make the flower sprout up. When the conflicts of our daily life are here, it sways. And sometimes those conflicts can knock the flower over and come back up. And the more that we water that flower with the things we do in recovery, the things that heal our spirit, then those are the things that are going to make that flower more strong and resilient. And when a flower dies, we don't just take it out of its environment, right? Or if that flower is wilting, we don't take that flower out of its environment. We give it nutrients, we give it love, we give it kindness, we give it stuff. And I feel like when people are struggling in their recovery, and I know this for myself because my own story, when I struggled in recovery, relapsing, come back, people started to take me out of their environment, right? And I didn't know how to come back to a healing environment. So I just continued to bleed, and I continued to wilt, and I continued to do all those things. And so the things that we can do to nourish that, to provide it things, are the things like working our 12-step and the things like Annette has, and all these things. And so I invite us to today to just feel kind of what we're feeling today, so we can ground our feet by just feeling our feet right below us. And I invite us to feel whatever part of our body is connected onto our chair or wherever we're sitting. Or if it feels better to stand, we can stand. And I invite us to just allow our arms to kind of go where they want to go. And once we allow ourselves to feel comfortable, and again, I invite us to let us feel comfortable today. We don't have to sit in a certain way, what feels right for us. I invite us to then start to begin to breathe in through our nose, down to our belly, and out through our nose. And I invite us to allow our belly to bring the breath into it. I invite us to release our belly and breathe that breath down. Once we feel comfortable with that breath coming down into our belly, I invite us to just notice what thoughts we have in our head. What are our thoughts today? One way that we can get past our thoughts is to feel our breath and just feel our body. When it feels right for ourselves, I invite us to tell ourselves either a mantra or an affirmation, or even a prayer if that feels right. And it can be something like, I am strong, I am kind, I am enough. Whatever it is today that's going to build our spirit up rather than break our spirit down. Whatever that's going to bring a sense of peace to our body. And I invite us, as we're thinking of an affirmation or mantra, to feel and notice maybe where we're carrying some stress in our body, maybe in our forehead or our shoulders or our hips. And let's just notice that and then send breath to it. And I invite us to just gently add some movement in. If it feels right, you can reach one hand over our head, inhaling as it comes up, and exhaling it down, reaching the other hand up and over our head. And I invite us to continue to breathe big breaths through our nose, all the way down to our bellies. And as we're doing this, I invite us to notice where our thoughts are going, and then bring it back to our affirmation or mantra. And then maybe even notice if saying those positive thoughts brings us peace inside our body. And then just feeling our breath. Good. Let's do a couple more. Just feeling and noticing the connection of our mind back to our body. And when it feels right, let's bring our both hands up over our head. There's no right or wrong way. We just let our body do what feels comfortable for ourselves today. And then when it feels right, let's just kind of sway back and forth. And I invite us to allow our hands to do what feels right. Let's give ourselves that space. And let's allow our head to do what feels right. Maybe it feels right to look up, or maybe it feels better to just keep our eyes gently closed. Let's bring our mantra or our affirmation back in if and when we need to. And when it feels right, let's reach our hands up again, maybe visualizing our fingers pulling up to the sun or the sky. And when it feels right, let's bring our thumbs right down to our heart center. I invite us to notice our body, to feel our feet, and to say our affirmation or mantra a few times, breathing in through our nose and letting stress and tension go as we exhale through our nose. Let's honor ourselves, each other, and this practice. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. Namaste. So that's kind of a little bit of trauma-informed yoga. It's a lot of gentle movement, a lot of noticing the way we feel, noticing our emotions. I guess one thing that trauma-informed yoga does for me is, for so long, I just shoved all my emotions down, or else I ran. I was a competitive runner, and so I would run through all my emotions, and it allows me to feel and then to decide what I'm going to do with it. I can either react or I can breathe and feel my body. I've got two little girls, so if you can hear, they're in the background, but it's amazing stuff. And it's not just for people in recovery, it's for everyone. And with that, I think that's the end. If anyone has questions, I would be more than happy to answer them through email. Again, I've got a YouTube channel, and thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Jenna. Appreciate it. And that is just a nice break in the day too, to just give yourself the permission to take a few minutes for yourself. So thanks. We all benefited from that. So
Yeah, and we can always come back.
Yeah, that's great. Let's continue on, and I think we want to talk a little bit about what you can do to support recovery in your community. And Mary Jo, do you want to maybe introduce some other ideas that came up in the Changemaker retreat. So just to get people thinking while we're asking you to share in the chat what other thoughts you have around ideas for supporting recovery in your community.
Thank you, Lori. And first, I just want to thank Annette and Jenna for sharing today. I have had the privilege of meeting Annette and Jenna at both of the retreats I was at. And so I met Annette and I met at Long Lake, and Jenna and I met at Giants Ridge. And I'm in awe of both of you. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for your work. And thank you for your passion around supporting recovery in your communities. I don't know how I can follow all of this, but I will try to. But we just wanted to spend a little time just as you've thought about the stories that Annette and Jenna have shared in their recoveries. Have you thought about ways that maybe in your own communities you're seeing that support being built for recovery from substance use or opioid use in particular? So if you have those experiences or you have those ideas, please, you can unmute and you can share, or you can put them in the chat as well. Some of the other projects that kind of emerged or grew from our Changemaker retreats is one was starting or supporting a recovery garage where one of the Changemakers would take donated cars and fix them up for transportation, because we know in rural areas, in particular, transportation is an issue, but it becomes even more significant and more critical when someone's in recovery and needing to get to appointments and needing to get to meetings and those kind of things, and how just important that being able to have those connections are, and sometimes without transportation, that you're not able to do that. And so that was a recovery garage where this individual and his wife, who also was a change maker, they had a group home, and they helped to even train some of the folks that were staying at the group home and how to do certain mechanical things and fix cars and all those kind of things, and then would offer these cars to those in recovery for no cost. And so that was just one of the ideas that we were able to support. I'm trying to think of some other ideas, Lori, that I know there was many that we had some that were focused around art and trying to use art in recovery, whereas several Changemakers had those ideas. Others were community events. So starting a sober-free events in the community. And unfortunately, some of those didn't happen or had to happen virtually because of COVID. But, again, like I said at the beginning, there was this strong need for relationship building. And I think that's one thing I have learned throughout this work, is that is just that connection to people and to resources and to support is just so critical. And you heard that from Annette and Jenna throughout their talks today as well. One of the things I know, Annette, that you said was that you wrap them in services, and Jenna, you did your analogy with the flower and the roots and growing too, that just having that support is so critical. And I've learned so much from both of you, but Jenna, when you shared the other day with Lori and I around treatment and just being a Band-Aid, that really, and the critical piece that recovery and the supports in that brings is just really something we all need to keep in mind. So ideas that others have around recovery, or things that they've seen happen in their own communities that have really supported recovery.
Mary Jo, I'll just mention one of the Changemaker projects was around building a family resource center. Again, that was one that kind of got sidelined during COVID, as did, now we have a question. Henry's asking about any upcoming trainings for Changemakers. And I know that there had been another retreat that was planned, and that also got sidelined as a result of COVID. So any updates related to anything else coming along?
So right now we have nothing planned. I think we need to kind of get past this COVID as we navigate towards the end of COVID, if I even can say that, or get to a space where we can hold those in-person events again. And and figure out what that kind of support looks like from a funding perspective. But it's definitely something that would be supported again if we have the opportunity to do that. Yes. But
Another
if you
thing,
have ideas and you want to share them with us, please do, because one of the things that, like I said at the beginning, these grants that we have, the funding that we have to support some of this work is all around education and outreach. And so being able to support any idea, even if we weren't able to couch it in a Changemaker retreat, we can work with folks to kind of think about what that might look like and what supports you need to try something in your own communities.
I'll just mention too that as we have gone out and done, whether it's community forums or just tabling at events, recovery events, we hear suggestions from people, and it's generally somebody in recovery or family members of someone in recovery that they will share. You know what people really need is, and then they'll share their thoughts. And so that's, the community is truly where we get our ideas and suggestions. And I think, Jenna and Annette give some really good examples of that, because it was what they experienced themselves and what they needed. And so I think that's really helpful to understand too. So don't ever think that your idea isn't the right one or a good one, because we hear from family members, particularly all the time, about situations.
As you continue to think about ideas, we have a few minutes left, but I hope that this conversation today has planted a seed. Like that analogy has been used a couple of times, but planted a seed for you to think about that, and to think about, just the ways that we can support communities in, to build those strong communities, recovery communities, and to support folks in recovery. And so if there's any, I hope that this is a seed, right, that was planted and it continues to grow. Ideas are born out of this conversation today. And so again, like Lori said, we welcome those as well.
Mary Jo, we have a question of who should we send those thoughts to?
Sure, I'll put my email in the chat here and you can send them to me. That would be great.
And keep thinking about those as we're going through the remaining slides. We just want to share a few other things with you going forward here. We do have some upcoming webinars yet. We have a variety of series going on. One is No Place Like Home, all around housing issues, recovery and health, which of course we're talking about today. You see that there are a number of recovery health webinars yet to come, everything from tomorrow, Befriending Your Emotions in Recovery, all the way through April 22nd, Medications for Opioid Use Disorder. And so you can see a variety there, and you can sign up. And the nice thing is that when you sign up for one of these webinars and you complete the evaluation, which I believe Diane just put into the chat as well, when you complete the evaluation, you will receive all of the recordings for the webinars in that series. And so expect that you will get the links to all of the recovery and health webinars in your mailbox. So be looking for those after the end of the series. Other ones that we have coming up yet, Family Friendly Earth Care series. Still have a couple of those left, and Finding Balance. And our colleagues, our Latino colleagues in the Latino Financial Literacy team are sharing a number of webinars in the series as well. And our upcoming ones on making sense of it all. There are both consumer and professional webinars coming up. And you can search all of our webinars and events. I believe that Diana has put that in the chat as well. Again, our evaluation. And You will again get a follow-up email 30 days following the webinar series, and we'll ask you some questions about that, but you will also receive the links to all of the recordings as well. If you do need a certificate of participation, you can receive that as well at the last, whoops. This is the last session. We will provide you that information as well. We'll send that out in the follow-up email tomorrow so that you're able to get a certificate if you need that. And we welcome you to engage with us in social media of various kinds and sign up for our family news e-newsletter as well. Again, thank you. And we're so happy that you were here to join us today for our discussion about the Changemaker projects. And we again thank Jenna and Annette for sharing their journeys along the way. And again, you're welcome to certainly share your thoughts on any suggestions you have on recovery programming going forward. We're happy to take those. Thanks again for joining us and have a good afternoon.